Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cisco Optics Podcast, where we talk about pluggable optics for networks. Single-mode fiber transformed telecommunications in the 1970s and 1980s by raising the ceiling for communication bandwidth over transoceanic distances. It took years of R&D to get there, though. Remember, we're sending light through tens of kilometers of glass without regeneration. I mean, imagine how pure the glass of an 80-kilometer thick window needs to be in order to see through it. This is episode 50, and we continue our conversation with Roshene McCool, expert in fiber networks for telecommunications and scientific instrumentation at Corning Optical Communications. She tells us about latency and low-loss fibers. Roshene McCool is a senior market and technology development manager for Corning Optical Fiber and Cable, specializing in single-mode fiber and access networks. She provides technical and market insight for Corning's global fiber and cable product line management teams. Roshene has 30 years of experience in engineering and optical communications systems and subsystems, including many years designing networks for advanced radio telescopes. Roshene has held project management and coordination lead roles in diverse teams throughout her career. Roshene is the acting chair of the Women in Fiber Committee for the FTTH Council Europe and is the winner of the Corning Optical Communications You Make a Difference Award 2022 for her leadership of diversity initiatives in Corning. Roshene holds a master's degree in electrical and electronic engineering from the University of Nottingham, United Kingdom, and is a chartered member of the Institute of Engineering and Technology. And now join me as I talk with Roshene McCool.
An awful lot of attention, and of course it's been in the news.
So
Recently that Microsoft has recently purchased Luminicity, who were the big proponents of this anti-resonant fiber type.
Okay, I have two questions. One is who is interested in this low latency and why? That's actually okay. The third question would be, what do you mean by anti-resonant?
Yeah, so in terms of who's interested and why, I think it's early days, and I think there are some emerging applications. So we've seen a couple of data centers connected, and we've seen a stock exchange.
I always thought it was the
connected.
financial application where people just need to get their data, a nanosecond earlier than everyone else, and they can translate that into dollars of profit.
Yes, but one of the things I think I wouldn't like to speculate on why other people are interested in it right now, right? So why people are buying it, I think we can make observations of what's actually happened, but I wouldn't like to speculate on what it is for specific organizations that they particularly like. What we can say is that it's certainly true that in these fibers, if you're transmitting via air rather than silica, the light goes faster, the latency is reduced. So that is that's a verifiable truth.
Is it lower loss because it's through air and not glass?
Yeah, so I mentioned that there's been although holocore fiber concept has been around for a while, there's recently been some excitement because these anti-resonance fiber have measured low loss. That's in comparison to the photonic band gap holocore fibers that have much higher loss. So they're suitable for potentially for some specialist applications, but not for the kind of lengths that we would see in a transmission network.
So the photonic band gap is like a periodic structure, and not a single hollow core.
It looks crystalline. Yeah, it looks crystalline in nature, whereas the anti-resonance fiber, they have these sort of glass, almost like capillary tube-like structures within them.
Okay, so it's not a simple empty tube. There's more, both
No.
the photonic band gap and the anti-resonant, they have some shape and structure of
They're
glass.
very complex structures as well.
Okay.
Yeah, they are quite complex to make sure that the light is actually guided within the fiber.
Okay. And even the one that was the anti-resonant that's low loss, is it low compared to previous anti-resonant structures, or how does it compare with that 0.16 dB per kilometer fiber that you mentioned? Does it even approach that? Or?
They are approaching that. There have been some research papers and experiments demonstrating low loss that is reaching that silica fiber level. And in fact, I think one paper from Southampton that was even lower than that.
Wow, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, but those are in the research realm. Of course, as we've described earlier on about the quality architecture and what have you, there's a very big step to take between a research fiber and a
something that's manufacturable.
Volume manufacture.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a common theme. I've certainly seen a lot of optical devices that look great in the lab, but would be very difficult to translate to a mass manufacturing scenario.
Yeah, and it's those circumstances where you might have one or two of something in the lab and it works really well, but then if you have to translate that to thousands and thousands of them, it becomes a different paradigm, and there are very
it's a totally different problem to solve.
Considerations.
Right? Yeah, a totally different skill set.
Yeah, because if you've only got 10 of something and 10% of them fail, that's fine. But when you've got 1 million, that's a real headache.
It's a lot of failures. All right. Well, I've kept you for like an hour and a half at this point. I don't know if you realize it's been that long. It went by really fast for me. Is there anything else?
I don't want to keep you on, but there was one thing that one of the themes that we said we talk about, which is the history. There's quite a legacy, right? So I can take the idea of optical transmission back to 1880.
Really?
And Alexander Graham Bell.
Wow.
And so in 1880, Alexander Graham Bell proposed the transmission of speech by light, and he called it a photophone.
Really?
Which, when you think about where smartphones are today, that's some prescient statement, right?
Yeah.
So he said we were going to have photophones, and it turns out that he was right.
Yeah. So he should have gotten in the stock market too.
Yeah, I know, and I think it's a better name than the smartphone, so I quite like that one. And then nothing really. I mean,
but how did he do it? Was it through free space?
It was
There's
free
no fiber
space
back
optics,
then, right? So.
and no fiber back then, and it was 200 meters, so it didn't quite catch on because you could probably shout that far. So that was in 1880, and then nothing much happened until the 1960s, and the laser was invented. And so shortly after that, 1966, so there was a guy called Charles Kao, and George Hockham, and they proposed transmission of light in a waveguide. But also at the same time, a French researcher called Alan Wirtz, and he was proposing the propagation of coherent light in an optical fiber. So he was also quite prescient, and those two things happened pretty same year. So the two papers were released in 1966.
Okay.
But at that time, fiber was practically opaque. I mean, the dBs lost per kilometer was in the hundreds and,
Yeah.
high
Like,
hundreds.
I'm guessing that's like window glass or something.
Yeah. And so it was at Corning in 1970 that the first low loss optical fiber was developed, and that was by Peter Schultz, Donald Keck, and Robert Maurer. And they invented the first low loss fiber. And from there, the first installation of that fiber was between New York and Washington, D.C.
So I heard a story,
and
I don't know if you've heard this or not. I heard a story that those three people you mentioned who made the first low loss fibers. That was the 7th part of my conversation with Roshene McCool. Next time, we'll conclude with fiber dispersion's effect on communication and coherent optical signals. Hey, we have a new website. It's optics.podcastpage.io. That's optics.podcastpage.io. You can either listen there or use the same podcast platform you've been using all along. Please subscribe. Better yet, leave a review, especially if you use Apple Podcasts. Remember, we're part of the Cisco Podcast Network, where you can find other great Cisco podcasts too. We also have educational videos on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com and search on Cisco Optics. Thank you for listening. This is Pat Chow, Product Manager at Cisco Optics. The next episode is the 8th and final part of my conversation with Roshene McCool. Until next time.